the dawn of history, mankind has feared monsters. Whether they come from the dense woodlands, the deep sea, the far reaches of outer space, or even from the pages of a book, there is no shortage of things that go bump in the night. But among all monsters is a pervasive and almost universal concept: the Boogeyman. A special kind of monster that exists primarily to instill fear in children. Found in nearly every culture around the world, there exists some story, someone, something that parents tell their children about in order to scare them into behaving. Tonight I would like to explore these boogeymen with you, so I've taken the time to research and compile a list of who I think are the top examples. Now, first and foremost, I should clarify my criteria for this list. The only primary focus is that the monsters in question are well known, are scary, and are significant in how they relate to children. These are all pretty vague, and there's a lot of room for interpretation, so feel free to disagree with me on the order or inclusion of some of these. With that aside, just about everything else is fair game. For this list I'll be drawing from mythology, folklore, urban legends, cryptozoology, games, cartoons, movies, books, and creepypasta. My name is Zenanaki, and without further ado, I present to you all my list of the top 100 boogeymen. Starting off our list is something you've no doubt heard of: the idea of an unknown intruder or creature concealing themselves underneath a child's bed as they sleep. Exactly what this monster does varies by telling. Most commonly, it's believed that they bite the toes of kids whose feet dangle over the edge of the bed. However, this monster has a very specific weakness. It can't hurt you when you're under the covers.
Next we have what some consider to be a modern yokai. The Kuni-Kuni is a monster of urban legend, described as a tall, thin, featureless entity which stands in rice fields and sways and flows with the wind, as if made of paper, even on days with no wind at all. The Kuni-Kuni means to wiggle or meander, describing this movement. They are said to kill anyone who gets too close to them, motivating children not to trespass onto the farmer's property. It is also said that even so much as a glance can drive a person insane.
A story told in just about every part of the globe that has roads, a phantom hitchhiker is an alleged ghost said to haunt various roadways, likely as the places where they were killed or ended up in a bad accident. The goal of the hitchhikers differ from story to story. Some say that picking one up will cause you to meet an untimely end as you repeat their original accident. They serve as cautionary tales, not to pick up strangers.
This vampire-like female spirit is said to roam the streets at night in search of children who stay out too late. She is said to be the ghost of a woman who murdered her husband after she found him cheating on her. After an angry mob tried to drive her out of town, she took her own life and came back as this angry and vengeful ghost. She is said to nest atop a palm tree, where she keeps the children she catches. Known as the Man in the Well, the Brandman is said to be a tall, thin entity with only black skin and glowing red eyes. The Brandman gets its name because he lives in the bottoms of wells, spreading sickness and disease to those who drink from it. The only way to get rid of the Brandman is to bribe him into leaving by throwing money down the well, one of the many origins that led to the tradition of wishing wells.
A large and amphibious cryptid said to lurk in waterways across southeastern Australia. Descriptions of it vary by area, but most consider it to be a furred animal of incredible size and strength, with powerful jaws full of teeth which it uses to ensnare and eat those who venture into its domain. Rivers, lakes, ponds, and sometimes even the open ocean. They serve as a warning not to go swimming in these areas without supervision.
Originating from the collectible figurine series Horror Clicks, is a particularly eerie sight to behold. Described as a monster who preys upon children for no reason other than to kill. Nursery rhymes written about him say it best. 3 radiator raps with a long iron pipe, 3 soft knocks on a dead man's door, 3 long mirrors smashed in with a hammer, 3 drowned kittens in a pail on the floor. 1, 2, 3, Mr. Fright, Mr. Fright. Who will you kill on this cold, dark night? A kind of small but malicious water spirit found in the English counties of Yorkshire and Lancashire, the Grindylow is said to use their long, muscular arms to grab hold of children who play too close to the edges of bogs or lakes. Stories of the Grindylow are used to frighten children away from bodies of water, where they may accidentally drown.
Named after his characteristically large hat, this well-dressed little man appears at dusk on nights with a full moon. If he spots a young lass with long hair and big pretty eyes, he'll fall in love and do everything he can to court her, but his actions do more harm than good. At night he'll sing and play music, which keeps the girl from falling asleep. And before meals, he puts dirt on the dinnerware, which contaminates the food. The only surefire way to rid him is to cut one's hair, forcing him to look elsewhere for a bride.
The small man is allegedly a miniature humanoid which can be seen pulling a cart behind himself. Any children who decide to play outside after sundown risk encountering him and being taken away. If the small man was to take you, you would be shrunk into a similarly small person and have to ride on the back of his cart forever. Parents would sometimes use the term rollin' cart to allude to the small man and make their children behave themselves. The mid-1940s was a time of paranoia in America. However, the town of Mattoon, Illinois, took that paranoia to a new level. In 1944, many residents of the town claimed to encounter a tall, mysterious gentleman wearing a gas mask and dark clothing, carrying a flit gun used for spraying a paralyzing toxic gas. Believed to be little more than a case of mass hysteria, the alleged phantom attacker exemplified the common public fear of chemical weaponry, and the looming threat of war showing up on our doorsteps.
Although an original animated character made in 2015, this peculiar character stood out to me as more than deserving to appear on this list. The Sad Man is a large and rotund man who appears to be completely naked, save for a circular smiling mask affixed to their face. The Sad Man has many other disturbing qualities I could go on about, but I think I'll let you discover them for yourself by checking out the animation by Jake Lava. Link is in the description. Meaning 1 foot because of their peculiar appearance, La Parasola is a kind of female demon found throughout South American folklore. She is said to use a seductive disguise to lure unsuspecting travelers away into forests and jungles, before revealing her true appearance to them and promptly killing them by draining them of their blood. They serve as a cautionary tale against infidelity, warning that men who let themselves be easily seduced may meet a grisly fate.
Also called Maran in Swedish and the Grok in English, the Morko is a Finnish monster most famously portrayed in the Moomin series. Here, they are depicted as purple pear-shaped entities who freeze the ground beneath them everywhere they go. Appearing as an ordinary man with Caucasian skin, the Pistako is a malevolent entity bent on murdering others in order to harvest their body fat. This fear is said to stem all the way back to the Spanish conquests of South America, where conquistadors were said to use fat from corpses to treat their own wounds. The name Pistako comes from the word piste, which means to behead, slit one's throat, or cut into slices.
Believed to be a small dwarf-like entity, it is a harmful spirit said to cause disease and death to those it comes across. The easiest way to protect yourself against the Tokoloshi is to elevate your bed, as they will have trouble reaching you. This belief likely stems from those who slept in an enclosed space containing a fire. The flames would eat up the room's oxygen, filling the space with CO2 and suffocating anyone too low to the ground.
Meaning the weeping woman in Spanish. La Llorona is a spirit of a crying woman who kidnaps children who wander too near to the river at night. The story goes that, in life, the woman actually drowned her children after being betrayed by her husband. After she too passed away, she was barred from entering the afterlife until she could locate her missing children. And thus she wanders the earth looking for them. But since it's been so long, she herself has forgotten what they look like. So she takes any child and drowns them in hopes of being allowed to finally pass on.
Residents of South Wales should be wary around the holiday season because they might get a visit by the Mary Lwyd and its caretakers. The figure in question is actually a horse's skull on the end of a pole, controlled by a puppeteer hidden under a sheet. The figure's jaws are often rigged to snap open and closed, frightening children and adults alike. Around Christmas and New Year's, this holiday mascot goes door to door, singing and demanding to be let inside. The residents must sing back and persuade them to leave. Otherwise, the Mary Lwyd and its caretakers will enter the house and raid it of any of its food and drink before moving on to the next house.
In 2001, reports of a frightening monster began to spring up across the Indian capital of New Delhi. Citizens reported a small, hairy humanoid roughly 4 feet, or 120 centimeters in height. Dubbed the Monkey Man, he was reported as having sharp metal claws, glowing red eyes, a helmet covering his head, and a sort of control panel on his chest. He allegedly leapt across rooftops and left deep scratches on anyone he crossed paths with. Theories ranged from him being a demon, an extraterrestrial, or even an escaped science experiment gone wrong. But modern skeptics believe he was little more than a case of mass hysteria. Originally a beautiful woman, Lamia was a Libyan queen who had an affair with the god Zeus. Enraged, Zeus's wife Hera kidnapped Lamia's children, who were never seen again, and cursed Lamia's eyes to remain ever open, forcing her to always cry and be unable to sleep. Zeus then granted her the power to shapeshift, allowing her to remove her own eyes and finally rest. But instead, Lamia used her ability for revenge by becoming a snake-like monster who devoured children in the night. Those who misbehaved would be caught by the wicked woman and swallowed alive.
Small, dark, and ugly, the Pombero is a mythical humanoid creature said to cause various forms of mischief, from vandalizing property and frightening livestock to kissing girls who misbehave. He's also a guardian of the forest, protecting birds from being hunted. Above all else, the Pombero is a master of stealth, able to turn invisible, walk silently due to hair on the bottoms of his feet, can mimic any noise for deception, and can squeeze his small body through the smallest of cracks and openings.
If there's anything the Australian outback is most infamous for, it's the intense heat and the deadly wildlife hidden throughout. It might not come as a surprise to hear about a special predator set to capitalize on the summer sun. Those who rest under the shade of a fig tree run the risk of the Yara Mayahu dropping down from said tree, using their specialized fingers to drain them of blood before swallowing them whole with its huge frog-like mouth. After a drink and a nap, the Yara Mayahu spits the victim back out, now smaller and red. This process is repeated until the victim is transformed into another of these creatures. The only way to avoid attacks is to play dead until night, when the monster becomes inactive.
Sighted across various counties of West Virginia comes a particularly eerie being, a 6-foot-tall bipedal creature covered in thick white fur and sporting a set of large pointed horns. Unlike similar hominids like the Sasquatch or the Goatman, the Sheep Squatch is said to be a kind of white devil, a being of Appalachian folklore said to be an omen of premature death. Whatever its purpose, this beast seems to be more bark than bite. It's known to frighten travelers and campers by screaming loudly into the night as it charges towards and away from targets, breaking trees and ripping up the ground, but seldom actually claiming victims. Perhaps the legend of the creature itself serves to warn people against the dangers of local wild animals, like bears and wolves.
A sort of guardian spirit found in the jungles of Belize and the surrounding region. This 3-foot-tall humanoid mainly appears as a mischievous little cowboy with a wide-brimmed hat and backwards-facing feet. Lacking thumbs of his own, the Tata Duende is said to lure children into jungles before biting off their thumbs and leaving them lost. The only way to escape is to conceal your thumbs so it appears you only have 4 fingers. The Tata Duende will think you are a being like himself and let you go. This myth warns children to be wary of strangers, as well as to show caution when exploring wooded areas.
In the Flanders region of Belgium, children are told not to stay up past their bedtime, or else they'd be eaten alive by a ghost named Old Red Eyes. The story goes that in the 17th century, children began to go missing, and soon a shadowy figure was caught trying to kidnap a young girl. The dark figure escaped after transforming into a large black dog and fleeing the scene. Locals later tracked down a homeless man they believed to be responsible, and he was promptly lynched and skinned alive. His skin later being buried in the basement of St. Rumbold's Cathedral in Mechelen. Their red-eyed ghost is now said to prowl the countryside in search of their skin, so they can return to their original self and continue their original reign of terror.
Never man, never take him by the hand. He'll never be seen or heard again, forever in his Neverland. Originating in the upcoming game, Terradrome: Reign of the Legends. The Neverman is a grotesque figure with a penchant for stealing the facial features of unlucky children, or making them disappear altogether. Those who get taken away slowly lose all trace of their former identity, fading from the memories of even their closest friends and family. How can anyone search for a missing person when no one remembers that they even existed at all?
In the region of northwest England lives a nasty sort of witch said to be responsible for drowning children and others who frolic too close to her waterways. Personifying the dangerous entangling muck and algae into a nasty green woman with long hair might be a little on the nose for some, especially considering the name Jenny Greenteeth also applies to real plants such as duckweed. Nevertheless, the stories of this hag persist and act as a good deterrent against swimming through hazardous ponds and marshes.
Most of us has probably been warned of the dangers of accepting candy from strangers, and this is without a doubt the kind of danger that the titular Candy Lady possesses. The city of Terrell, Texas began to panic as one by one children began to go missing. Eventually, as time passed and local children began to get older, a few started speaking up about something unsettling. Apparently, when they were younger, the kids would wake up and find a piece of candy on their windowsill, and they kept this a secret out of fear that their parents would put a stop to the free sweets. Some of the candy would even include notes written on the wrapper, urging the children to come out and play. Signed, the Candy Lady. For the unfortunate few who followed the notes, they were never heard from again.
Adref a mi ukontaf. Huke mi guta a gip yar olaf. Run home, as quick as you can. The cutty black sow shall snatch the last one. Halloween has always been host to ghouls and ghosts, but one of the earliest spooks who started it all was the tailless black sow, also called the cutty or cropped black sow. This demon appeared in the form of a large black pig who walked upright on 2 legs. It would appear on Kalangea, the first day of winter, which later evolved into Halloween, where they would steal the souls of an unlucky few. People could protect themselves by lighting great bonfires to keep them away, but when the fire started to dwindle, you better hope you made it home before the black sow caught up with you. A unique kind of urban legend spread across Europe, from Poland to Russia to Greece to even Mongolia. This malevolent black car carries a number of sinister passengers, each with their own wicked intentions. Some believe the cars are driven by demonic priests or nuns who steal blood or souls for some evil ritual. Others believe KGB and secret police are behind the wheel, abducting enemies of the state or nobodies to harvest their organs. Some say the Volga is a living car that drives itself, built by none other than Satan to pick up souls and transport them to the underworld. Regardless of the telling, one constant among the stories is that death always follows the arrival of the ominous black Gaz-21 Volga.
Funeral homes have a dreary atmosphere, heightened not only by their abundance of human corpses, but by the hidden and often mysterious practices that go on in them. Such fear is perfectly encapsulated by the Tall Man, a figure as imposing as he is enigmatic. Once an honest mortician by the name of Jebediah Morningside, he became fascinated with death and toiled to find a way to connect our world to the world of the dead. After constructing a machine that allowed him to do just that, Jebediah was transported to a realm unknown, and the thing who emerged in his place was entirely something else. Defeating the Tall Man simply summons another to take his place, one of countless many like him. His plans cannot be stopped, only delayed. With his powers and knowledge, he will inevitably bring about the end of the world. All worlds.
It is said by some to be an ancient pagan ritual involving a candle, paper, and your blood. A ritual that must be performed at exactly midnight. Some might say that it's only a game, but there's no fun to be had in summoning the Midnight Man. If successfully summoning him, participants would roam their blackened homes with only the light of their candle, which goes out when the Midnight Man draws near. If the candle isn't relit in the time, then the unlucky victims will be shown their greatest fears, as they fall prey to this ancient deity. If you manage to survive until 3:33 a.m., then you're safe for the time being. But the Midnight Man will always continue to watch you.
Small, ugly, and quick to anger, the Boggart is a mischievous fairy-like spirit found in folklore across England. Believed to be the original inhabitants of the marshes, natural holes, and odd geographical features, the Boggart is territorial and often causes trouble for those who settle nearby. They're usually invisible under normal circumstances, but they may choose to reveal themselves to people trying to sleep, appearing in the shape of something scary in order to give them nightmares. While their actions are mostly harmless pranks, if angered, they can cause food to spoil, furniture and tools to break or disappear completely, and pets and children to go missing. A figure seen in Gula folklore in the American South, the Boo Hag is a sort of vampiric witch that steals the breath from people as they sleep. Entering homes through cracks and small openings, the Boo Hag will sit atop a sleeping victim and violently ride them while sucking away their breath, leaving victims excessively tired in the morning. Perhaps most disturbing, however, is how they might also steal a person's skin, as they naturally lack their own. During the day, they hide themselves by wearing these stolen skins like clothes, until, of course, they rot away and force them to steal more. During their attacks, they shed these disguises, revealing their bloody innards. Stories of the Boo Hag are likely based on the phenomenon of sleep paralysis, in which sufferers may hallucinate figures holding them down in a similar manner.
If you yourself cannot release, then it will come and take a piece. Tall, pale, and ugly, the Look-See is one of the most recent horror icons to grace our screens, and quickly they gained popularity. Don't let his lack of eyes fool you. He'll peer directly into your soul. Regret, guilt, remorse. If any of these feelings dwell within you, then you'll be paid a visit by the Look-See. Taunted with illusions of people or objects that fill you with such emotions, victims must learn to move on from their pasts. Those who don't will face a grisly punishment.
Found in the folklore of the Pacific Northwest coast of North America, the Kshtaka is a race of shape-shifting beings who take on the form of otter people. Using magic, illusions, and incredible strength, They take delight in overturning boats and drowning the crew therein, or more simply, tearing them to shreds. Even more sinister, some of the otter men play tricks by imitating the cries of an infant or a woman in order to lure people into the cold wilderness, where they may either kill them or use their magic to transform them into otter men like themselves. The beasts are also said to be responsible for kidnapping women and children, often as a means of expanding their own population by force. These legends most likely originated as a way to deter native children from wandering too close to the ocean by themselves. Long arms, red eyes, and impossibly thin, this shadowy demon loves to hide within small nooks and crannies, or under things like rugs and beds. Children who misbehave are warned that the Balbus will come to get them, and if they let their rooms become messy, they will give the monster more places to hide as they quietly draw closer. Sometimes they are more mischievous in nature, pulling on victims' hair or making the air in a room uncomfortably hot and stuffy. But if they should come across a particularly unruly child, then the demon would snatch them away, never to be seen again. Thought to originate from different ancient myths of mother gods, this wicked witch specializes in killing and eating children. Also named Anna or Agnes, Black Annis is a blue-faced old hag who lives in a special cave with an old oak tree at its entrance. At night, she may wait in the branches of said tree to snatch unsuspecting travelers. On other nights, she ventures across the countryside, stopping at houses and reaching her long arms through the windows to grab hold of those inside. Once she has a hold on you, she will never let go due to her powerful iron claws, the same claws which she used to carve her legendary cave into the rocky hillside. Victims taken back to her cave will be skinned alive and then eaten, and the skins are tanned and later used as clothing by the witch.
A kind of Kinderschreck or child terror, the term can vaguely apply to a range of spirits and other spooky beings found across the Netherlands. Prominently, spirits who lived in water or lurked in people's homes. In Limburg specifically, they are thought of as a kind of poltergeist or noisy spirit, imagined as a tall, shadowy man who drags rattling chains along the ground. The spirit is said to be responsible for unexplained bumps in the night, as well as abducting children who misbehaved.
A kind of ghost who has appeared multiple times throughout the Ghostbusters cartoons and comics. They are a Class 3, fully corporeal parasitic being, first documented in East Germany sometime in the early 18th century. This grotesque ghost has the power to corrupt the hearts and minds of young children, persuading them to misbehave and disobey authority figures. Over time, these children become more and more wicked as they slowly transform into a Grundle themselves, and the cycle repeats with new children becoming targeted. The monster may have been seen as scary for different reasons than intended, as many concerned parents believe the Grundle to represent a sort of sexual predator, though the creators insist the parallels were completely unintentional. An animal-like spirit found in Slavic paganism, this shadowy beast is said to lurk in dark and secluded places such as caves, natural holes, and abandoned buildings in the wilderness. They choose these places not only because they fear the light, but so they may also ambush people and animals who come too close. Before they attack, they let out a low croak that sounds like claws scraping against hardwood. If you get away quick enough, you can escape, as the Bok are often clumsy and unable to give chase. It is believed that stories of the Bok have been inspired by bears, an animal that has long been extinct in the region and only exists in legend.
The evilest of evil, the cruelest of cruel, the king of darkness. He has many infernal names, but the only safe way to refer to him is him. One of many recurring villains who does battle against the Powerpuff Girls. This effeminate devil is a master of manipulation who takes sadistic pleasure in the suffering of others. Where other baddies are concerned with robbing banks or general mayhem, the goals of him center on corrupting the hearts of others and plunging humanity into despair. In the episode Speed Demon, agreed by most fans to be the darkest and scariest episode in the series, we glimpse a dystopian alternate future in which HIM has taken over. By this point, he has grown so powerful that nothing can stop him or even harm him. Not even the Powerpuff Girls.
A classic monster seen in Azerbaijani fairy tales, divs play a similar role to the giants and witches found in Western fairy tales. Enormous, ugly, with the voice of a lion and the strength of an elephant. The div loves to devour children and will go to great lengths to do so. The only way to overcome a div that has its sights on you is to outsmart him, but one false step and you're dinner.
A sort of domestic spirit or brownie sent to frequent the rivers and waterways across the northern British Isles. Though usually harmless by nature, the Shellycoat loves to play pranks on travelers, either getting them lost or causing them to fall into the water, so it may laugh at them. These harmless intentions could spell great trouble for some, however, such as those struggling to traverse the wilderness, or those unable to swim. Foolish young children are particularly susceptible to their antics. The spirit is also known for collecting shells, such as from clams and snails, and adorning their clothing with them. Hence the name.
The Baku is a legendary yokai, originally found in Chinese myths, and later brought into Japanese folklore. It is said that the gods created the Baku using the leftover parts of other animals, resulting in a chimera with the trunk of an elephant, the body of an ox, and the paws of a tiger. The fearsome beast was hunted for its pelt, which was said to ward off evil. When tales of the Baku merged to Japan, it changed into a spirit resembling a tapir. This Baku was unique for devouring nightmares, and if it was still hungry after, it would devour the good dreams as well, including the dreamer's hopes and desires, resulting in despair and an otherwise empty life for the individual.
Also called the Drakus, these are the restless spirits of those who have died within stone structures such as houses, towers, and bridges. Taking the form of a shadow, the Talisam is known to cause poltergeist activity and produce haunting wails and moans. While they all result from those who pass away prematurely, some tales offer a more grim origin, that they are the ghosts of those who have been walled up alive inside the stone structure, and thus can never leave as long as the structure continues to stand. The citizens of Nepal Mandala have a unique annual tradition of bringing boiled rice and buffalo meat to a field in Kathmandu in order to appease the Guru Mappa. The story goes that long ago, this giant was encountered in the woods by a gambler who asked it to help him carry some gold home. Afterwards, the man struck a deal with a monster where it would live in his attic and feed upon naughty children whenever it got hungry. When neighbors caught on to their children's disappearances, they made a new deal with the monster that they would feed it every year if it agreed to stay in a field far away.
Known as the Red Filth Licker, this amphibious humanoid lives in the plumbing and drains, where it can feast on the gunk and the sewage. If bathrooms and other drain-adjacent places are allowed to get particularly dirty, then the Akanami would climb out and eat the filth. Rather than seen as a helpful creature for reducing our chores, this ugly yokai is seen as a pest and menace, and serves as the personification of fears of filth when entering a dark bathroom late at night. It is also said that any surface that it cleans is in fact riddled with diseases.
The Kolupalik is not like the mermaid you may be familiar with. They are often described as humanoids with fins coming out of their head, torso, and back. Their hands webbed and clawed, sharp and made for hunting. They come from icy Arctic water smelling of sulfur and wearing amatoks to carry off infants. The Quillapalik lures children by tapping on weak spots in ice and stealing them away. It is unclear whether they eat them or store them away to feed on their young, innocent energy to remain immortal. The most notable warning sign, aside from the smell of sulfur, is the sound of humming when you are near the shore.
Many viewers will no doubt recognize this as the character featured heavily in the Conjuring series of films and spin-offs. However, few may know they're based on a real doll by the same name. Actually a Raggedy Ann, the doll was given to a pair of student nurses, Donna and Angie. Regularly, the pair would come home to find Annabelle had moved or changed positions, sometimes even in completely different rooms than previously left, and soon after, they began finding notes written in red crayon with a child's handwriting. After the doll was collected by paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, a skeptical visitor to the Warrens Museum challenged the doll to do its worst. Hours after, the unlucky man lost control of his motorcycle and had a fatal crash. In 1785, several children in the township of Blair, Maryland accused Ellie Kedward of witchcraft. She was found guilty and banished in the middle of winter. It was assumed she died of exposure. The following year, all of her accusers and half the town's children had vanished. Many people today know the Blair Witch as the titular antagonist of the film The Blair Witch Project, which is credited with spawning the found footage genre. However, lore and history of the witch, while still fictional, is much richer and more elaborate than many realize. Alongside the film are several in-universe documentaries, and even old web series compiling hundreds of articles and reports about Blair, Maryland, its supposed history, and the woman said to be haunting it, Ellie Kedward. Many eerie and haunting tales mention this woman who wanders the woods without her feet touching the ground, who swallows children under shallow creeks and turns the water to sickening oil, who causes people to go missing and later turn up mutilated, and who whispers in the minds of the weak. There lives a great unknowable evil in the woods surrounding Burkittsville, Maryland, the town formerly known as Blair.
So, there have been many classic monsters that Scooby and the gang have faced over the decades. Creeps of every shape and size, many of which were iconic enough to frighten many children over the years and earn a spot on this list. But I chose to limit it to just one who I felt stood out from the others. Amidst a decrepit and abandoned airfield, a derelict spacecraft creeps its way to Earth, and out steps this blue phantom who glows and cackles madly. Are they the ghost of some astronaut or cosmonaut who died in space? Or perhaps were transformed by some sort of galactic force? Maybe they're an alien, or the ghost of one, if that's even possible. Well, to break the illusion, they're just a guy in a costume trying to scare locals. This is Scooby-Doo, after all. Nevertheless, the spooky space kook stands out as one of the most creative and unique spooks the series has featured, even across its multi-decade runtime, and there are many who remember getting the heebie-jeebies from their grim appearance and sinister laugh.
A legend from Lower Saxony, Germany, dating back all the way to the late 13th century. While the story is now seen as a sort of fairy tale, there are many written records that indicate that this event, or something very similar, did indeed take place. According to the legend, the town of Hamelin was suffering from a particularly nasty rat infection. One day, a mysterious piper appeared, dressed in a bright multicolored, or pied clothing. He claimed that he would remove every rat from the town for a handsome fee, and the town's mayor agreed. So, with his pipe in hand, the piper played an enchanting song, which seemed to hypnotize every rat in town. He led them out of the town and to the nearby Weser River, where one by one they all drowned. When the mayor only paid part of the agreed fee, the angry piper swore vengeance. And later that year, the piper returned on St. John and Paul's Day. While the adults were in church, he again played his magic flute, but this time it was the children who followed him out of town. 130 children in total. The true fate of these children is unknown. Some say he led them all into a nearby cave, while others say that they drowned in the river. What is known is that they were never seen again.
A tall, thin man with haunting white eyes. The Dongola Miso is a monster of the Congo who delights himself in snatching naughty children. He carries with him a bag or satchel, filled with toys and candy, which he uses as a sort of lure to get foolish children away from safety, where they'll make for easy prey. The stories of this spook are primarily used to make children go to bed on time, as well as warn against the dangers of disobeying their parents. And of course, why they shouldn't listen to strangers.
Between 1764 and 1767, a huge beast terrorized the population in an 80-kilometer square area of southeastern France. In this 3-year period, it claimed the lives of over 100 people. The beast was described like an unusually large wolf, almost the size of a cow, muscular and covered in orange-red fur. The beast sported sharp claws and powerful jaws, which it used to brutally tear out the necks of victims. Unusually, the creature hardly targeted pets or livestock. It particularly went after women and children, often those who were alone and defenseless. But in a few instances, even ventured into towns in broad daylight and attacked people around their homes. Many hunts and expeditions to slay the beast were carried out, and hundreds of wolves were slain as a result. But the attacks continued, until they stopped as mysteriously as they started. Modern attempts to identify the beast of Gévaudan have proven inconclusive, with theories including a wolf, a pack of wolves, an escaped lion or hyena or other exotic pet, to even the work of a serial killer, or perhaps a werewolf.
If it's in a word, or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. An entry representing trauma, depression, guilt, resentment, and other strong negative emotions that linger in the recesses of your mind. The Babadook is an entry that preys on these feelings, haunting victims and slowly whittling away at the victim's sanity, starting with their mysterious pop-up book that will find its way into the target's home, and once read, will let the sinister mister into their minds. But what's more horrible of all is that he never lays a finger on his prey. Instead, he forces them to turn on one another. If there's one thing for certain about this bad book spook, it's that you can't get rid of the Babadook.
There are many forms of witchcraft seen across Latin America and many different people who practice it, of course ranging from good to bad. But in various parts of Mexico and South Texas lies the legend of Lechuza Bruja, or Owl Witch. She gets her name from her ability to transform into an owl, either partially or fully, through the use of black magic. In this winged form she stalks people in the night, cursing targets with bad luck and slowly draining them of their strength and vitality. They seem particularly fond of lone cars traveling down empty roads at night.
The reality we see around us contains many wonderful things, and perhaps just as many horrible things. Nature is cruel, and it's easy for some to find themselves trapped in a world that seems to be against them. Imagine finding an escape in almost magical other world, where all wrongs are right, all bad's good. And at the center of that world, that's where she is found. An enigmatic figure of mysterious origins and nature, the other mother weaves a world of wonder designed to entrance young children, who will never be allowed to leave.
Meaning horned woman, the Baba Roga is an ugly witch said to kidnap and eat children who misbehave. What sets her apart from other boogeyman figures is the unique way she enters homes. She is said to squeeze her body through tiny cracks, especially those found on the ceiling. On a slightly personal note, when I was a child, I had a bedroom that had a noticeable crack on the ceiling, directly above my bed in fact. So, reading about the Baba Roga actually gave me some chills, the thought of her appearing from my ceiling and slowly descending. I'm sure many of you watching at home would feel the same.
A deceptive sort of spirit of Inuit folklore, literally named the Shapeshifter. It is said that when you venture into areas where the Irizhak resides, you might catch little fleeting glimpses of it out of the corner of your eye. They are said to be the descendants of those who ventured too far north and became trapped in the world of the dead, becoming shadowy, formless creatures as a result. They are said to be masters of causing others to lose their way as well, and are also known for capturing young children and abandoning them in the middle of nowhere. It's theorized that the myth was made to explain the disorienting effects of natural gas, which is known to accumulate in low-hanging pockets in a few areas where the Irizhak are said to inhabit.
There was a crooked man who walked a crooked mile. He found a crooked sixpence upon a crooked stile. he bought a crooked cat, which caught a crooked mouse, and they all lived together in a crooked little house. This original rhyme from 1842 is a rather harmless one, simply recounting an unusual man who lived a very unusual life. However, the poem's legacy has led to the titular character being featured time and time again in different forms of media, always as a mysterious and almost demonic antagonist. Tall, creepy, and of course, crooked.
Literally meaning water children, Kappa are a race of turtle-like yokai found in Japanese mythology, sometimes said to be mischievous and cause harmless pranks, other times said to be malicious and prone to murder. Kappa often lay in wait in rivers or lakes, surprising unexpected travelers, and sometimes causing them to meet an untimely end under the water. Their crucial weakness is their absolute dependence on water to survive. Even leaving it for a moment can cause them to dry out and die. Their natural counter is a bowl-like indentation on the tops of their heads, allowing them to hold water, and thus venture onto land. They're incredibly strong and dangerous, so it takes skill and wit to get them to spill their supply of water, rendering them helpless. They exist as a warning not to swim in rivers with hazardous currents.
One of the most bizarre and disturbing entries on this list, the Noklave, is the most fearsome demon found in Orcadian mythology. The monster is described as a large horse with a human's upper body sprouting out of its back, resembling a rider. From this torso hung a pair of unnaturally long arms that reached the ground, which is where its name originates, as the Knuckle Dragger. And on top of its grisly, oversized head, nearly a meter wide, which hangs lifeless from one side due to its weight. As for the horse's features, it has a single cyclopean eye that glows like red fire, and a gaping jaw that spews toxic black smoke. Finally, altogether, the beast is said to completely lack skin, revealing its veins and muscles for all to see. For most of the year, during the summer months, this aquatic demon, and many others, are kept locked away by the Great Sea Mother. However, when the winter becomes cold, and the seas become turbulent, the Noklave is said to rise up out of the sea, and cause all manner of death and destruction for all he comes across.
A catch-all name for malevolent spirits found throughout the Caribbean, with a range of different names and variations to reflect the diverse cultures across the many islands. Despite this, there's some common ideas that are shared across the different versions. Primarily, Jumbies are believed to be the ghosts of people who were evil in life. Where good souls appear as a white, cloud-like mist, Jumbies appear like smoky black shadows with glowing red eyes. Another common trait is that they have backwards-facing feet. When this is the case, the common way to ward them off is to place a pair of shoes outside your door, as the invading Jumbie will try in vain for hours to put them on. Said to be the opposite of a guardian angel, El Coco is an ugly monster that watches over children from afar, typically high up areas such as rooftops, in order to catch when the child misbehaves. The name Coco comes from the word coconut, in this context referring to a human head or skull, so an accurate name for them in English would literally be the skull. When it finds a child who has disobeyed their parents, it waits to corner them alone before snatching them away without a trace. There are many different tellings of what happens to the child after. Usually, they are eaten. In all cases, they are never seen again.
Literally the long, black being. The Nalosa Falaya is a shadow dweller spoken of by the Choctaw people, a prominent Native American tribe of southeastern North America. The Nalosa is described as a tall, thin being with lanky limbs, pointy ears, and very tiny eyes. Their preferred method of travel involves slithering along the ground on their belly like a sort of snake or weasel, allowing them to creep up on people without being seen. They prefer to hide in the shadows, and if they manage to hide within yours, they incite negative thoughts and temptations. If you give in to these thoughts, then the Nalosa Falaya will eat away at your soul piece by piece. Or more cruelly, if you manage to resist, then they may simply devour you completely.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill. A horror game series so iconic and influential to the genre it needs no introduction. The titular town serves as a liminal space between the real and unreal, where nightmares come to life. And in this town spawned a monster who left a lasting mark on many gamers. Pyramid Head makes his debut in the series' second title, serving as an embodiment for the main character James Sunderland's guilt. The design which they're named after is a large, overbearing metal contraption that appears to be painfully locked around their head, symbolism for the burden of guilt, which is further exemplified by their cumbersome and unwieldy sword they drag behind themselves. Everything in Silent Hill fears Pyramid Head, including the other monsters. And unfortunately for them, and us, the persistent nature of Silent Hill's creations allowed such a fiend to reappear in later entries of the series, continuing their role of tormenting the weak.
Prior to the formation of the 12 tribes of Israel, the natives of the region, the Canaanites, had many gods that they worshipped. But among these gods, there's one who stands out today, Moloch, the king. Among the many monsters and evil spirits mentioned on this list, be aware that our world is also home to evil gods, such as this one. Depicted as a human-like bull of great size, worship of Moloch consisted of performing sacrifices, human sacrifices, often infants who were too young to struggle. Worshippers would construct huge bronze statues of Moloch with various chambers along the body. It is there that the offerings were placed, and beneath the statue a fire would be lit, causing the bronze to heat up and cook the sacrifices alive. Meanwhile, loud drums were played to drown out their cries of pain.
A shadowy figure more than 7 feet in height, easily blending into the trees around the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, an area which serves as his stomping ground. Known to the Lakota and Dakota Native American tribes as Lataku-He, or What Is It, due to his ambiguous appearance, Walking Sam is believed to be a sort of demon or evil spirit who has haunted the area for about half a century, instilling depression and negative emotions in those he crosses paths with, and subsequently stealing their souls if they should happen to meet an untimely death. As of today, over 100 documented suicides in the area are attributed to Sam's influence.
Perhaps the most bizarre and enigmatic figure to come from Victorian London and the surrounding region, exactly who or what he was remains unsolved due to many conflicting elements. Sighted across a 67-year period from 1837 to 1904, Jack was described as a sort of phantom said to stalk the streets of London under the cover of night. He received his name due to his uncanny ability to leap incredible heights from a standstill, as if he had springs in his shoes. Jack was said to conceal himself under a large black cloak, with a helmet, tight white undergarment, and sharp metal claws on each of his fingers. Beyond his simply devilish appearance, Jack was known to loudly frighten people and spew bluish flames from his mouth, as well as assault people by swiping at them to tear their clothes. One woman who was violated by Jack reported his skin as icy cold to the touch, like that of a living corpse. Police and others would always give chase to try and apprehend Jack, only for him to make a swift getaway by casually jumping several meters up over fences and onto rooftops before disappearing into the night.
Clock Tower. This early entry in the survival horror genre of games is remembered today for 2 main reasons. Its haunting and dreary atmosphere, and the iconic Scissorman, lurking around his mansion, and getting his name for the large pair of scissors he uses to slay his victims. Invincible and invulnerable, each Scissorman in the series is a part of a long line of killers born into the Barrows family every few generations, for the purpose of sacrificing young people to the Great Father, the dark god the family worships. Throughout each game, you must contend with one, sometimes more, of these Scissormen, who is able to pop up any time and in any location. Nowhere is safe.
A shape-shifting trickster spirit named after the call it shouts into the night. Clud! Clud! Said to arise from the ashes of a witch or wizard that has been burned alive, the residual evil magic takes the form of this beast said to prowl the countryside around the river Dendra in Belgium. While they can take many shapes, a common one is that of a large black wolf that stands on its hind legs, with wings on its back and chains dangling from its ankles. With this frightening appearance, the Clud lunges at passers-by, knocking them to the ground, only to vanish before inflicting any true harm. Another common form is a lone horse that beckons people to ride it, only for the Clud to later buck them off into a river or pond, so it may laugh at them before vanishing again. Fortunately for us, this is the Clud's favorite sort of activity, mean-spirited mischief that's usually pretty harmless. Regardless of their form, they can always be distinguished by a pair of small blue flames that float above it. These are the Clud's true eyes.
An unstoppable killing machine said to lurk around Camp Crystal Lake. Jason has an almost sympathetic origin as the victim of negligence. Bullied as a child due to his appearance, the young Jason was pushed into the Camp Lake, where he subsequently drowned while the camp counselors were fooling around instead of watching him. Thanks to some ambiguous black magic, Jason managed to come back to life, living in isolation in the nearby woods. After witnessing the death of his mother, Jason decided to come out of hiding and start killing off everybody who entered the area he called his home. Luckily for Jason, and unluckily for us, that black magic mentioned earlier never went away. As time and time again, Jason always managed to come back to life and continue his indiscriminate murder. There's just no end to this Crystal Lake slasher.
I'm sure you can probably imagine a handful of reasons why it might be unsafe for a young child to travel down lonely roads at night, and I'm equally certain that none of you watching imagined anything like this. The Ha is a mythical hybrid monster that truly stands out among the other hybrids. The face and left hand are that of an ape, a lobster's claw for their right hand. One leg is a donkey's, while the other is a panther's. A turtle shell protects their front, while a giant scorpion's tail protects their rear. And finally, atop their head is a Medusa-like hair of snakes, writhing between a set of large ram horns. The Ha is known for possessing incredible speed. It is impossible for any child to outrun them. Hiding isn't an option either, as they also have flaming eyes which allow them to see in the dark. Those who are caught are killed, skinned, and fashioned into the clothes the Ha wears.
A legend as old as time, or at least however old mirrors are. Bloody Mary is the vengeful ghost of a beautiful woman who was brutally murdered whilst admiring her own reflection in a mirror. Over the last century, it's become a party game for teens and kids to try and summon Mary, by chanting her name 3 times into a mirror, in hopes of being shown a glimpse into their futures. But those who are fated for early death are in for a grim surprise, as Mary is infamous for being as dangerous as she is cruel.
Secure, contain, protect. The motto of the SCP Foundation, a fictional series akin to creepypastas that explores the titular government operations to contain and study various anomalies. One such anomaly, the Old Man, designated as SCP-106, is a sinister figure who maliciously stalks and kills without any clear reason besides the joy it appears to bring him. 106 gives the Foundation a run for their money, as he cannot be permanently contained nor destroyed, only locked up within a labyrinthian cell, but even that is only temporary. SCP-106 is able to pass through any and all solid objects, even disappearing into his own personal dimension when he chooses, all the while leaving behind a black, oily substance that dissolves everything like a highly acidic tar. As mentioned before, true containment is impossible for such an entity, leading to an incident in which he prowled a suburban town on Halloween night. The casualties were numerous. SCP-106 has since been retaken into Foundation custody, but it's only a matter of time before he escapes again.
Almost everyone has memories of playing outside late in the summertime. Memories which often conclude with coming inside after the sun goes down, as it is dangerous to be out after dark. This fear of the night is heightened for the children of Haiti, as they have a unique threat said to be on the prowl. Metminwi is a thin giant who towers over buildings thanks to his legs that stretch over 2 stories in height. The Metminwi strides through the empty streets of Haitian cities after sundown, looking for unsuspecting prey that he can snatch up with his equally long arms. His name is a contraction of the French maître, meaning master, and minuit, meaning midnight, literally making him the Midnight Master. Children who are caught outside at midnight when he makes his rounds are caught in his cold grip and are never seen again.
Po, po, po.
Meaning the 8-foot-tall woman. Hechiseku-sama is a malevolent demon found in Japanese folklore of apparently unknown origins, though some say it is an offshoot of another yokai called the Tall Woman. This character is named for her incredible and imposing size. The 8-foot-tall woman was said to wander suburban areas and places along the countryside, stalking children from a distance and emitting a strange sound with its deep, muscular voice. Once a child is targeted, the family must go through great lengths to keep the monster from stealing them, normally sealing them inside a room for several days, surrounded by magical charms, and not letting them make contact with anybody. This is because the Hechiseku-sama is also quite deceptive, able to mimic the voices of friends or loved ones, in order to let them inside.
Originally a fictional character from the short story The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, written in 1820 by Washington Irving, the archetypal character has become a popular trope in American folklore. The story goes that the Horseman was originally a Hessian trooper, a German soldier who served alongside the British during the American Revolutionary War. He was killed during the Battle of White Plains on October 28, 1776, after his head was blown clean off by an American cannonball. His fellow troops managed to carry away his body, but the remains of his head were lost on the battlefield. It is said he was buried a few days later on October 31st at the cemetery of the Old Dutch Church of Sleepy Hollow. Since then, every year on Halloween night, his restless spirit rises from his grave, stealing a jack-o'-lantern as a replacement head as he searches high and low for his original. Those unlucky enough to cross his path around the village of Sleepy Hollow, New York on Halloween night will have their own heads taken away. When Mother Leeds discovered she was pregnant with her 13th child, she exclaimed aloud, "Let this one be the devil!" She could never have known just how terrifyingly true this statement would become when months later she gave birth to an unholy demon. The Jersey Devil is a bizarre and interesting creature, a supposed cryptid with a blatantly supernatural origin rather than being rooted in the realm of pseudoscience. A chimerical beast with cloven hooves, horns, wings, a pointed tail, and the ability to breathe fire. Since its conception, it's been said to terrorize a rural area of New Jersey known as the Pine Barrens. Over 1 million acres of dense woods, plenty of space for a monster to remain hidden. And it's here that locals have for over 200 years reported sightings of the creature, heard blood-curdling screams in the middle of the night, discovered cloven hoof prints in impossible locations, and even had pets and livestock turn up dead. A myth to many, and a truth to others. There's something very wrong lurking in the Pine Barrens. He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed, I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not return here again at the request of the rake. A Mariner's Log, 1691. The rake is a mysterious, vaguely humanoid creature of unknown origins and intent, sighted variously across the northeastern United States over the past several decades, with elements of this legend stretching as far back as 1691. This malevolent being is described as nude and hairless, almost skeletal and disproportionate, resembling something that was mangled in a sort of accident. The name rake refers to the creature's incredibly long and sharp claws, which they are said to rake across their victim's body, easily slicing into flesh. Skittering along the ground with uncanny speed and grotesque movements, there is no escape from the rake once it has set its eyes on you.
One of the earliest stories to come from the French colonization of what is now Canada. Their name literally translates to the good man of the seventh hour, as it was customary to give a pleasant name to monsters, to avoid angering them whenever mentioned. The common myth is that the 7 o'clock man is an old man with a large hat and heavy coat, who carries a sack over his back that he uses to store the children he kidnaps, earning their namesake. They are said to take children who are outside past 7 o'clock at night. However, there's another slightly different origin for their name. Before the advancement of modern hospitals, many advanced medical practices were limited by a select few who held specialized jobs in their field. One such job was the bone setter, who was responsible for correcting broken bones by forcing them back into place, so that they would heal correctly. Before anesthesia, this practice was of course incredibly painful. It is thought that early Franco-Americans would frighten their children by telling them that the bone setter would come to them if they misbehaved. And when the story was repeated in French-speaking communities, the bone setter was changed to bonhomme setteur, evolved him into the sack-carrying boogeyman we have today. The Teki Teki is a sort of corporeal undead, born of the remains of a woman who has been tragically sliced in half at the waist, forcing them to crawl along the ground using only their hands. In their grasp is also a bladed weapon, such as a scythe or a large pair of scissors, resulting in a sort of clicking sound as they crawl, which gives them their name. In other stories, they have the ability to fly, and the sound comes from their weapon scraping the ground. The story of the Teki Teki is a dark and cruel one, and spawns a monster just as sinister. According to legend, the earliest Teki Teki came about just after World War II in an American-occupied Japan. When a young woman was walking alone at a train station late one night, she was assaulted by an American officer and ended up falling onto the tracks, becoming cut in half by an oncoming train. But as it was very cold that night, she didn't bleed out quickly and suffered a slow, agonizing death. It's now said that this rogue spirit prowls the streets of Japan in search of her missing legs. If she spots you in the middle of the night, and you're familiar with her story, she will ask you if you need your legs. If you answer incorrectly, she will slice you in two and take them for herself, forcing you to take their place as the new Teki Teki.
Going further back in Japan's history, we see a spook more closely modeled after the Oni of mythology. The Namahage are ugly, brutish demons, concealed under long straw capes, with wooden drums and oversized knives. Every year on New Year's they go door to door in groups of 2 to 5, asking, "Are there any crybabies around?" The Namahage seek out children who have misbehaved or acted lazy throughout the year, threatening to snatch them up and later eat them if they don't do better. Another prominent theme is if children had the bad habit of sitting too close to the fireplace for long periods of time, they would develop blisters and heat rashes. It is said that the Namahage use their oversized knives to slowly and painfully cut the blisters off the child, encouraging them not to sit so close. Possibly an experiment gone wrong, an escaped carnival freak, or maybe even the devil himself. The Goatman is a fiendish figure sighted across many states in the US, described as an enormous fur-covered brute with gnarled horns and hypnotic eyes, brandishing an axe so they can dismember anyone who crosses their path. In some areas they're said to lurk in the deep woods, slaughtering hikers and campers alike, while in others they have a signature bridge or overpass they seem to haunt. Even more frightening, however, are tales of the Goatman lurking through people's suburban backyards late at night, peeking through windows and causing local pets to disappear without a trace. Well, all except for their heads, which he's said to leave behind as a calling card.
Imagine waking up in the middle of the night and seeing someone in your room, but not like a normal intruder. Someone small and ugly with claws and wings, and a piercing cyclopean eye. But as frightening as this insidious creature might be, you can't scream or run away. you can't move at all. Literally meaning battling on account of their shape, the Popobawa is perhaps the most famous Shetani, or African demon, found exclusively on the island of Pemba, Tanzania. It's said they actually originated as a jinn that was captured in the Middle East and brought to Africa by a wealthy sheik, who later released it out of anger. But instead of enacting the sheik's revenge, the Popobawa fled and ran amok, causing chaos night after night, even today. Sweet dreams.
In a list full of demons and monsters and other supernatural horrors, it just goes to show that all you need to be a boogeyman is a knife and the desire to kill others. Okay, maybe he's a bit supernatural given the injuries he shrugs off. As a young boy, Myers had a childhood like any other upper middle class American, until one Halloween night when he murdered his older sister in cold blood. Institutionalized until adulthood, doctors spent years trying to get through to Michael and figure out just what could drive a boy to do such a thing, and one such doctor found the answer. Simply put, Michael was evil. Pure, inhuman, uncaring evil. It wasn't until Michael's escape that he proved just how evil he was, slaughtering dozens of innocent people as he made his way back home on Halloween night. But what was most scary about Myers wasn't his mask or knife or anything like that, but the idea that monsters don't need claws and fangs or to live in some faraway land. They can be ordinary people, and the safety of your own home isn't enough to keep them away.
Fairy tales have always served as cautionary stories to teach lessons to young children, but across many of them, there's a reoccurring villain, the big bad wolf. No mere wild animal, the wolf is a cunning trickster as intelligent as man, best shown when he disguises himself as Red Riding Hood's grandmother. Oh, after he killed and ate said grandmother, of course. And even for those who can see through his deceptions, he's plenty more dangerous than any ordinary wolf. Where other wolves simply howl, he huffs and puffs and blows down houses like a four-legged hurricane. The wolf exemplifies many powerful and dangerous things, which must be avoided carefully and cleverly. Don't get lost in the woods. Don't trust the strangers you might meet in the woods. And certainly, don't let them into your house.
A classic phantom attacker said to stalk the woods surrounding the Colchester Overpass, located in Clifton, Virginia, a location most locals know as the Bunnyman Bridge. The story goes that in 1904, the residents of Fairfax County petitioned for the closing of an insane asylum, forcing the inmates to be relocated. One of these inmates, a Douglas J. Griffin, was uniquely dangerous. A serial killer who had previously murdered his family on Easter Sunday, dressed, of course, as an Easter bunny. As fate would have it, Douglas managed to escape after his transport bus had an accident, and he managed to elude police searches while leaving the remains of bloodied rabbits strung up around the woods. After meeting his demise on an overpass at the hands of an oncoming train, the spirit of Griffin is said to haunt the area, and he doesn't take too kindly to trespassers. Not the first instance of them appearing on this list, nor is it the last. Rather than a real specific boogeyman like the others on this list, the sack man is a general archetype that many follow, specifically in the detail that they carry a large bag on their back, which they use to store kidnapped children. Also called names like the man with the bag or bag man, the sack man is usually very old or ugly in appearance. Sometimes they come once a year to take naughty kids. Other times they simply show up anytime a child is being particularly bad, taking them somewhere far away where they will never be seen again. While most of these bag men are mythical or magic in nature, this isn't always the case. Take, for example, in Chile and Argentina, where the old man with the bag is a sort of insane serial killer who society has accepted as a solution to disposing of naughty kids, however he sees fit.
A classic urban legend in small-town America, the legend of the Hookman has been retold countless times over nearly a century, inspiring many other boogeymen and even the slasher craze seen in horror cinema. The myth describes a murderous mental patient who escapes from the asylum and goes on a sort of rampage, murdering teens with a large hook he has in place of his missing hand. Of course, he is said to uniquely target those who engage in premarital sex and other things that teenagers should stay away from. So the best way to survive is to avoid all that and try to be as virtuous as possible. That, and try also avoiding desolate areas of woods at night.
You know the thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eyes. When he comes at you, he doesn't seem to be living until he bites you. And those black eyes roll over white, and then... oh, then you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming. The ocean turns red, and in spite of all the pounding and the hollering, they all come in and they rip you to pieces.
Alright, now I know what you're thinking. How can a guy like this be so far in the list? Surely there must be some mistake. But to be honest, Steven Spielberg's Jaws managed to be a more effective horror film than really any of the others mentioned earlier on this list. Before its release, sharks were considered about as scary as wolves or bears, and even today people still go camping without worrying too much about those. But after the release of Jaws, everybody was afraid to go into the water. Beaches, lakes, rivers, even places like pools where it would be impossible for sharks to exist, people had a new fear of even dipping their toes in the water. And this public image of sharks as ravenous monsters still persists today, in spite of how low the annual deaths from shark attacks actually are, especially compared to millions of other animals and hazards we should be fearing instead. Nevertheless, Bruce the Shark earns this spot for the everlasting impact they've had in the public subconscious.
Contrary to their obvious appearance in Land of Origin, this bandaged spook is not a mummy. Rather, the man with burnt skin is the restless spirit of someone who actually died when they were quite young. As a child, they were instructed by their parents not to fool around near fire, something which could easily lead to an accident. But the foolish child disobeyed, and in their fun, they ended up tripping and falling right into a large open fire. They cried out in pain as they were engulfed in flames. Help quickly arrived and managed to put out the fire, but they were covered in burns all over, and their leg, which had landed directly in the fire's middle, had been practically charred down to the bone, with no flesh there to save. Doctors at the time tried their best to help the poor child, but even modern medicine would struggle to save someone in a condition such as theirs. It is this child's ghost that still lingers, growing ever older, but unable to outgrow the endless pain they feel all over. The only pleasure they take is in finding naughty children before burning them alive to eat their cooked remains.
A character who needs no introduction. The SlenderMan is a fictional internet spook originating from the Something Awful forums, Photoshop contest of 2009. Created by Eric Knudsen under the surname of Victor Surge. Described as a tall, faceless figure who made children disappear. The character spread like wildfire, with additional images, stories, games, and videos being made to capitalize on the character, and weave an elegant yet ambiguous lore. The SlenderMan has become instrumental in creating what is now commonly known as creepypasta, a sort of modern internet folklore, which involves copy and pasting spooky stories across forums and other platforms, so they may evolve over time, like a sort of mythos. Looking past the immense legacy of the SlenderMan, a few commonalities have remained constant. He is unnaturally tall and thin, often proportionate that he may even blend in with trees, sometimes with tentacle-like extensions from his back which may resemble tree branches. The formal black suit he wears is indicative of intentionality, showing they're not some mindless creature, but instead something that thinks, something that plans and entraps. The faceless nature plays into the fears of the uncanny valley, and how facial features play an important role in detecting emotion and intent, making the faceless seem entirely alien and unpredictable. Corrupting the minds of children and the weak is icing on the cake, solidifying SlenderMan as an oppressive force that can and will harm those we care about most.
Said to be the son of 1,000 maniacs, the young Freddy quickly made a name for himself as the Springwood Slasher, using his job as a janitor for a preschool to target and murder young kids. Eventually, the people of Springwood caught wind of Freddy's actions. They took justice into their own hands and lynched Freddy by trapping him inside his boiler room and burning him alive. If only that were the end. In death, Freddy was visited by the Dream Demons, sensing the evil in his soul. They gave Freddy the power to wreak havoc on the living and avenge his own death. But not by attacking the parents who killed him, no. Instead, he targeted their beloved children where they couldn't be protected, in their dreams. Or rather, nightmares. Freddy is renowned not only for his iconic appearance, namely his glove with bladed fingers, but also for his unique ability to enter into the dreams of his victims, where he has total control. Remember, if you die in your dream, you die for real. Series creator Wes Craven actually based the concept of Freddy on real-life survivors of the Combatian genocide, some of whom were so haunted by trauma that they died of fright in their own nightmares years later.
Kuchisaki Onna, aka the Slitmouth Woman, is a malevolent and vengeful spirit of a once beautiful woman. After her husband discovered that she cheated on him, he slashed her so that her mouth was now stretched from ear to ear. Then he asked her, "Who will find you beautiful now?" Now in the form of a powerful Onryu, Kuchisaki Onna is said to wander desolate streets at all times of the day, cornering strangers, usually children, and asking if they think she's pretty. Of course, her mouth is concealed behind a mask or a scarf, only revealing it to those who answer yes to her question. To those who tell her yes, even after the reveal, are given a matching scar, courtesy of a large pair of bloodied scissors. Anyone who answers no is instead murdered on the spot, usually by stabbing, but occasionally also dismemberment, strangulation, or even being cut in two. Reports of the Kuchisaki Onna became very common in Japan in the 70s, to the point where children needed to be escorted home from school. Sightings stopped after an unknown woman was stricken and killed by a car while chasing a child across the road. The coroner noted that her mouth was split from ear to ear.
A character as old as religion itself. The adversary. The ultimate wrongdoer. The personification of evil, appearing by many names and many forms across different faiths. With as many shapes and descriptions as he has names, the archetypal appearance of the devil is that of a red man with horns and a tail, and typically with the lower legs of a goat. It is said that the devil whispers into the minds of the weak and the wounded and compels them to lie, cheat, or steal. Often for this reason, they're used to personify a person's more wicked desires, at odds with the person's conscience. For children too young to understand the concepts of true evil, it wasn't uncommon for the devil to be used as a tool for scaring young children into behaving. A particularly creepy entry on this list. The Bloody Bones Man is said to be a living and bloody skeleton who lives under the stairs or in cupboards, eating the flesh of naughty children. If you told lies, he would eat your tongue. If you stole things, he would eat your hands. And if you were hurtful to your friends or family, he would eat you from head to toe. Stories of this fiend first originated in England in the mid-1500s, and were subsequently brought to North America shortly thereafter, still spoken of today in the southern United States. Also called Tommy Rawhead, or Rawhead and Bloody Bones, specifically when the head detaches from his body. The Bloody Bones Man is also said to creep into children's rooms at night and watch over them, as if to make sure they're sleeping. It's said that the being originated as a demon that predates human settlements, initially found at the bottoms of deep bodies of water. It is said that the demon was attracted to the sites of great bloodshed, such as battlefields, where he and others like him grew to prey on human flesh.
You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus isn't the only one coming to town. Regarded by many to be the polar opposite to Santa Claus, where St. Nicholas brings gifts to all the good children at Christmas time, Krampus comes to steal the naughty children away. This menacing demon is believed to have spawned from pre-Christian traditions found across Central Europe. There is much debate on his exact origins, ranging from him being related to the Greek god Pan, the Wiccan horned god, a son of the Norse underworld god Hel, or even just the later Christian devil. Likely he is a combination of all of these and more. The idea of Santa Claus having a sort of evil counterpart isn't unique. There are in fact many different holiday characters known for devouring wicked children. But Krampus takes the cake for being the most widely recognized and celebrated of them. He is large in size, with hooves for feet and horns on his head, concealed beneath a coat of black fur. Most often, it is said that the children he takes are cooked together in a large pot for him to eat, keeping him fed throughout the year until the next Christmas rolls around. Finally, we reach the end of our list. It's time to unveil our pick for the number one Boogeyman character, based on their prevalence, their fear factor, and how well they antagonize children.
This might sound like an unusual pick to some, or an obvious pick to others. Rest assured, their placement at number 1 comes with great consideration.
Start off, Pennywise the Dancing Clown is a fictional character created by Stephen King in his 1986 horror novel, It. The clown motif is only a shape they take on so they can lure in kids before transforming into their worst nightmare.
Accordingly, King said he chose the clown as the main form as it's something almost universally disliked by everyone, at least under the context of them being creepy predators rather than silly fools.
And their true form, that of a giant spider, is an equally universal concept known for making skin crawl.
Added to the fact that Pennywise can take on really any shape or size it desires, or rather anything you fear most, specifically to incite as much fear as possible for his victims.
The shape-shifting nature of Pennywise is explained by him being of a cosmic origin, a near-godlike being who originates outside of the universe, who crash-landed on Earth as an asteroid millions of years ago in what would later become Derry, Maine.
Around every 27 years, Pennywise awakens from his hibernation and goes on a feeding spree, targeting any youngster he sees fit.
Often, he will torment his victims beforehand using their worst fears, as apparently the fear makes them taste better.
And there's no sanctuary in the presence of adults, as often Pennywise will dull the minds and wills of others to keep the whole town oblivious to his wicked actions, going so far as to make everyone forget about the children who go missing.
A dark god, a near unstoppable icon of evil, who can become anything you fear most.
Something who takes delight in torture and torment, who robs his victims of everything, and even wipes them from history.
Truly, Pennywise embodies all the worst qualities of the other monsters mentioned earlier, and it's for all of these reasons that they deserve the rank as the number one Boogeyman.
Thank you all so much for watching this video to the end. This was truly a massive project that I couldn't have done alone. There are 3 MVPs I want to firstly thank for their help in this production. Runya from In Moderation, and Black Index. These guys were the quickest to respond to this collaboration and were a joy to work with. I highly recommend checking out both their channels. In Moderation discusses many popular yokai, and Black Index is a more recent paranormal channel structured similarly to the SCP Foundation. Both feature very professional production quality and definitely deserve a watch. The third MVP here was Swift Wind, whom some viewers may recognize as the voice for the Bunnyman in some previous videos. They gave their voice for over 40 of the entries on this list that couldn't find any other takers. A huge load of work that sped up this episode's production immensely. I wouldn't consider his channel a paranormal one, but if you're interested in the show Death Battle or video game retrospectives, then I strongly recommend checking them out too. I also want to thank Dan the Man and Galaxy Max for providing additional entries. Links to everyone's channels in the description below. This video was a long time in the making. Too long. Like the title suggests, this was made as a celebratory video for passing 1,000 subscribers. Obviously, I missed that deadline by quite a while. Nevertheless, Top 100 is a series I want to make an episode of for every major subscriber milestone, at least to the best of my ability. This channel would be nowhere without the subscribers who watch it, and you guys deserve a treat for sticking around in spite of my rather sparse upload schedule. Thank you all again for watching. I look forward to making more videos like this in the future. Until next time, this is Ben Zenanaki, and I'll be seeing you all again very soon.